Welcome to our channel, BD Politics. You are listening BD Politics Explainer.
Okay, I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Imagine you live in a nice neighborhood. You've got good neighbors, you borrow sugar from each other, you watch each other's dogs. It's peaceful.
Okay.
Then one day, your oldest friend on the block knocks on your door. He says, "Hey, I really like your guest house. I want to buy it."
A bit forward, but, not a crime.
Right. But you say, "Sorry, it's not for sale. My grandmother lives there. It's part of the family." And instead of saying, "Okay, no worries," your friend pulls out a megaphone and screams, "Fine, if you don't sell me the guest house by next week, I'm going to slash your tires, cut your power lines, and empty your bank account."
Wow. That went from 0 to 100 very, very quickly.
Right.
It sounds like the plot of a psychological thriller.
Ah,
Or maybe a really intense mob movie.
exactly. It sounds like fiction. But take that scenario, scale it up to the level of global superpowers, and you have the reality we are waking up to this week.
It's incredible. We are unpacking a situation that, frankly, sounds impossible if it weren't plastered across every major headline from the Washington Post to the BBC. We are talking about U.S. President Donald Trump's latest and perhaps most aggressive move yet to acquire Greenland.
And, more importantly, the explosive aftermath of that demand. Because, let's be clear, this has morphed from a quirky real estate headline into a high-stakes geopolitical game of sell or pay.
It really has. We're looking at a potential trade war sparked entirely by a refusal to sell sovereign territory. We've got a massive stack of reports here. We're specifically drawing from a detailed report by Semakal, which, references that coverage from the Washington Post and the BBC I mentioned. We're going to walk through the reactions of European leaders, which are intense, the specific tariff threats, and, what this actually means for the NATO alliance.
The mission today is really to understand how a real estate proposal escalated into a threat that could, fundamentally break the Western alliance. We need to look at sovereignty, economic coercion, and what happens when an ally starts acting like an adversary.
So, whether you're obsessively checking global trade markets and worrying about your stock portfolio, or you're just someone who wants to know why world leaders are suddenly at each other's throats, this affects you.
It does.
This affects the stability of the entire Western world. So let's dive in.
Let's get into it.
We have to start with the ultimatum itself. I think ultimatum is really the only word that fits here. The president in the United States didn't just make an offer. He set a deadline.
He did. And the terms are incredibly stark. This is not the kind of negotiation tactic we are used to seeing between, friendly nations.
Not at all.
According to the reports, Trump has announced new tariffs on 8 specific European nations. And the logic is explicit. It's written in black and white. Make a deal to sell Greenland or face the economic consequences.
It's the make a deal or else strategy taken to a global scale.
Yeah.
And the timeline. It
Yeah.
is aggressive. We aren't talking about let's figure this out over the next year. We are looking at February 1st.
Which is right around the corner.
It's days away.
February 1st is the start date. Initially, it's a 10% tariff on goods from these countries.
Okay, so 10%.
Now, 10% is painful.
Yeah.
It hurts margins, it raises prices for consumers, but it is usually survivable for a short period. But here's the kicker. If there's no movement, if no deal is signed, that number jumps.
Oh.
By June, the tariff escalates to 25%.
25%. Can we just pause on that for a second? That is a massive hit to any economy.
Asset.
Usually when we talk about tariffs, it's about protecting domestic steel or, balancing a trade deficit on cars or aluminum. There's an economic rationale.
Right, you're dumping cheap steel, so we're taxing you. But this
is explicitly linked to the purchase of land.
Correct. That is what makes this so unique in modern history. The condition is clear. Sell Greenland or pay the tariffs. It's a transaction forced through economic pressure.
It's essentially saying, I will tax your industries until you give me the territory I want.
Yes. It turns trade policy into a weapon for territorial expansion.
So who's in the crosshairs here? You mentioned 8 countries. Obviously, Denmark is on the list because, Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark.
They hold the keys, so to speak.
But who else got dragged into this?
It's a list of America's closest traditional allies. It's essentially the core of Northern and Western Europe.
Okay.
So aside from Denmark, we have the Nordic bloc, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Then you have the economic heavy hitters, France, Germany, Britain, the UK, and the Netherlands.
That's the backbone of the European economy. You're talking about German cars, French wine, Dutch shipping.
Everything is on the table.
Wow.
And that's why the reaction has been so visceral. The Washington Post noted that these leaders are effectively shocked. And you have to understand the diplomatic context here. These leaders are used to disagreements with Washington.
Sure, they argue all the time.
They argue about tax rates, data privacy, climate policy, all the time. But this is different. They feel like a close ally has suddenly turned into an enemy.
It changes the fundamental nature of their relationship, doesn't it? It feels less like a partnership and more like a shakedown.
Completely. And the scale of the target list suggests this isn't just about pressuring Denmark. It's about pressuring the entire European establishment to force Denmark's hand.
Which brings us to the reaction. Because if the goal was to pressure Denmark into selling by isolating them, stare the neighbors so they pressure Denmark to cave, it seems like the opposite has happened.
The absolute opposite.
Instead of crumbling, Europe seems to be building a wall.
A wall of resistance, if you will. You might have expected some of these countries to scramble, maybe try to cut side deals with Washington to save their own auto industries, but they didn't.
No.
The 8 nations targeted issued a joint statement. They made it clear they were unified with Denmark and Greenland regarding sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Let's get into the specific responses, the who said what, because the language being used here is fascinating. It's not the usual diplomatic fluff where everyone is concerned.
No, it's blunt, very blunt. Take Sweden, for example.
Yep.
Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson. He did not mince words. He explicitly stated that they will not be blackmailed.
Blackmail. That is an incredibly heavy word to use against the U.S. president.
It is.
You usually reserve that for rogue states.
It is so significant. Kristersson sees this as a problem for the entire European Union, not just Denmark. He's identifying a threat to their collective way of doing business. If you give in to blackmail once, it never stops.
Right.
Then you have France. President Emmanuel Macron.
Now, Macron usually tries to play the whisperer, right? He tries to court Trump, build that personal relationship.
He does. But not this time. Macron drew a hard line. He declared that no fear or threat will influence us and called the tariffs unacceptable.
He's signaling that France won't be bullied.
At all. And then there's the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, the UK often tries to bridge the gap between the US and Europe, especially post-Brexit.
Yeah, they usually want to stay in Washington's good graces.
They do. But Starmer didn't sit on the fence here? Not at all.
What did he say?
Starmer criticized the move as completely wrong. But pay attention to his reasoning. His point was specifically about NATO.
Ah.
He argued that you cannot put tariffs on NATO allies, people you rely on for collective security, over a real estate dispute. It undermines the whole alliance. And he also emphasized a crucial moral point. Greenland's future belongs to its people.
Which is a nice segue to the nations actually in the region. What about Denmark? They are the ones actually holding the deed.
Denmark's foreign minister, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, was a bit more understated in his language, but just as firm. He simply stated he was surprised by the declaration.
Surprise! That sounds polite.
In the world of high-level diplomacy, surprised is often code for, I can't believe this is actually happening. Are you insane?
Right. It's a polite way of expressing total disbelief.
Exactly. And Finland. They share a massive border with Russia, so they take security and alliances very, very seriously.
I'd imagine so.
President Alexander Stubb took the adult-in-the-room approach. He reminded the U.S. that problems are solved via discussion, not pressure. A call for a return to normalcy.
And Norway.
Norway's Prime Minister, Jonas Gahr Støre, kept it simple. Allies cannot be threatened.
Allies cannot be threatened. I think that sums up the mood perfectly. When you look at all these quotes together, blackmailed, unacceptable, completely wrong. What's the pattern you see?
The pattern is a shift away from diplomatic politeness to a blunt refusal to bow to coercion. Usually, allies try to leave a door open for negotiation.
We look forward to further dialogue.
Here, they are slamming the door shut. They're saying, we will talk, but we will not negotiate our sovereignty at gunpoint.
It really highlights how fragile the concept of an alliance can be when the fundamental rules of engagement just change overnight. And that leads us to the bigger picture, because this isn't just about fish exports or aluminum prices. This is about security.
Precisely. If we connect this to the broader implications, we have to look at what Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, had to say. Her assessment is stark.
What's her take?
She argues that forcing the seizure of a sovereign territory against its will risks breaking the NATO defense alliance entirely.
Breaking NATO. That's what we're talking about. Not just a trade dispute, but the collapse of the security architecture that has held the West together since World War II.
It is. The argument is that NATO is built on mutual respect and defense. Article 5 says an attack on one is an attack on all. But if the leading member of NATO, the United States, starts threatening the territorial integrity of other members,
The trust just evaporates.
completely. If Washington is the one doing the threatening, who is left to protect you, it turns the whole logic upside down.
And Callis also pointed out that this creates a division in the Western world that adversaries could exploit.
That's the nightmare scenario. While the West is fighting over Greenland, other global powers, China, Russia, are watching. They see division, they see weakness, they see an alliance that's busy fighting itself.
And there is a deep geopolitical irony here, isn't there?
A massive irony. The reports highlight that European nations are still dependent on the U.S. for strengthening NATO against Russia. They need American military support on the eastern flank.
In Poland, the Baltics?
Exactly. They rely on U.S. tanks and planes to deter aggression. Yet simultaneously, they are facing economic fire from Washington on the western flank over Greenland.
It's like being in a foxhole with someone who is helping you shoot at the enemy, but he's also pointing a gun at your head, demanding your wallet.
That's a very apt analogy. It creates a schizophrenic security situation. You don't know if your partner is your savior or your mugger.
Bronwyn Maddox from Chatham House, a major think tank in London, went even further. Her language was incredibly strong.
What did she say?
She described this move as acting so contrary to policy and interest that it acts as a criminal act against their alliance.
Criminal.
Criminal. That implies it's not just bad policy, but a violation of some deep moral code.
Yes. And she suggests that the breach of trust is so severe that Europe might not just take the hit. They might actually use sanctions to hit back.
A sanctions war between NATO allies. That's unprecedented territory.
It is. We sanction Russia. We sanction Iran. We don't sanction each other.
Exactly. If Europe puts sanctions on the U.S. and the U.S. retaliates, the economic damage would be catastrophic. But we have to ask, why? What is the logic driving this from the White House?
Right. There has to be some kind of rationale.
Let's be fair and look at the argument being made. What is Trump's justification? Is this just about real estate, or is there a strategy?
Well, looking at it impartially, his argument, according to the reports, is geopolitical strategy. He argues that if the U.S. doesn't take Greenland, China or Russia will seize the territory.
So it's a preemptive strike. The logic is, I have to buy it so the bad guys don't steal it.
That is the internal logic. He views Greenland as a strategic asset on the risk board. He looks at the map, sees the Arctic melting, new shipping lanes opening up, and he sees resources.
Rare earth minerals, oil gas.
Exactly. He thinks, we need to own that before Beijing does. It's a very 19th century view of territory. Grab it before the other guy does.
Okay, that's the theory. But does that logic hold up against the facts on the ground? Is China actually about to invade Greenland?
According to European officials and the sources we have, no. They state clearly there is no indication of plans by Moscow or Beijing to seize the region.
No invasion fleets gathering.
None. China has interest in mining there, sure, but that's economic, not a military seizure.
And even if there were security concerns, doesn't the U.S. already have a presence there?
They do, a huge one. The U.S. military is already in Greenland. They operate the Thule Air Base, which is critical for missile warning and space surveillance. It's America's northernmost base.
So Washington faces no obstacles to increasing its troop presence if needed within the current framework.
Exactly. If the U.S. felt a threat, they could work with Denmark to expand Thule.
Mm-hmm.
They do not need to own the land to secure it. Military access isn't the issue. Ownership is the issue.
It really seems to be more about the title deed than the actual security.
I think so.
And speaking of ownership, we talk about Greenland like it's a vacant lot, like it's just snow and ice waiting for a flag. But people live there.
This is the most critical counterpoint, and one that often gets lost in the great power talk. We are talking about a population of 57,000 people.
With their own culture, language, and history.
Exactly. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, yes, but it has gained significant autonomy in recent decades. They have their own government, their own parliament.
They handle their own domestic affairs.
Right. They are moving towards more independence, not less. The idea that Denmark can just sell them like a used car is offensive to them.
And what do the people of Greenland say about becoming the 51st state, or a U.S. territory?
The polls are clear. The vast majority of residents oppose coming under Washington's authority. And it's not just quiet disapproval.
Right.
There are thousands of people protesting in Greenland and in Denmark. They are on the streets demonstrating against this plan. They are shouting, "We are not for sale."
So let's sum this up. You have a population that doesn't want to be bought. You have a parent nation, Denmark, that doesn't want to sell. And you have an alliance that says the whole idea is illegitimate.
And you have a U.S. president who says, "Buy it or I crash your economy." That is the impasse. It is a collision of an unstoppable force and an immovable object.
So where do we go from here? The clock is ticking. February 1st, the day those first tariffs hit, is just days away.
That's next week. The focus now shifts to Switzerland. The World Economic Forum in Davos is happening later this week.
Davos, the gathering of the global elite. Usually that's just billionaires skiing and talking about blockchain.
Usually, yes. Davos is about vague economic trends and high-end networking. But this year, it's going to be a crisis room. It's going to be the most tense diplomatic summit in years.
Who is going to be there? Is everyone showing up?
Trump is attending. But so are leaders from France, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, plus other NATO members like Canada, Spain, and Belgium. Everyone involved in this fight will be in the same small, snow-covered town.
It's going to be awkward, to say the least. Imagine the dinner parties.
Awkward is putting it mildly. It's going to be confrontational. EU diplomats are already holding emergency meetings to find a solution before they even arrive.
They need a game plan.
They do. The expectation is that new decisions or a collective response strategy will emerge from this summit. They have to decide if that wall of resistance we talked about holds up in person.
That's the real test. It's easy to issue a statement from your capital city. It's harder to stare down the President of the United States in a conference room.
And the choice facing Europe is stark. Do they stick to dialogue as they promised, try to talk Trump down? Or will they be forced into the counterstrike sanctions that analysts like Bronwyn Maddox mentioned?
It's a game of chicken with the global economy.
It is. If Europe hits back with sanctions, the U.S. might escalate again. And then you're in a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest democratic markets.
Which sends the global economy into a tailspin.
It gets ugly fast. It's fascinating in a terrifying way. How quickly this moved from a rumor to a deadline for tariffs in a matter of days.
It shows how volatile the current diplomatic era is. Traditional norms like "you don't threaten allies" are being rewritten in real time.
We are in uncharted waters.
So, to recap this deep dive, we have a real estate ambition that has triggered a tariff war scheduled to start February 1st.
And escalate by June. We have 8 major European nations targeted, the absolute core of the Western economy.
And we have NATO unity hanging in the balance, with experts warning this could break the alliance.
With a justification about China and Russia that just doesn't seem to match the reality on the ground.
And a summit in Davos that might determine whether this conflict cools down or blows up.
Exactly.
It brings up a question that I think every listener needs to consider. We often talk about alliances like NATO as these unshakable bonds, based on shared values.
Democracy, freedom, rule of law. That's the story we tell ourselves.
But this situation challenges that story. If an ally demands territory in exchange for economic peace, is the alliance still based on shared values? Or has it just become a transaction?
That is the fundamental question. If sovereignty has a price tag, then the rules of the international order have changed. We are moving from a world of rights to a world of leverage.
And with that February 1st deadline looming, the biggest question of all is, who blinks first? Does Europe cave to save their economies? Or does the U.S. back down to save the alliance?
Or does nobody blink, and we enter a very different, very dangerous world in June?
A frightening thought. We will have to wait and see what comes out of Davos. We'll be watching it closely.
Absolutely.
Thanks for staying with us. For more, please subscribe our channel. Thanks.